every album should be better than the one that came before it. We'll let our reviewers decide if we've succeeded at that. But I think continuous improvement is always important for anything you do in life. I want to keep creating the heaviest metal known to man. For bands our age, every day you wake up and someone just passed away, someone who was in a major band, or maybe one of your heroes or whatever. We all start dying the day that we're born, and we don't know how much time we have left. As long as we're producing and playing the true heavy metal that I love, I would like to keep going. I think we should keep going till the wheels fall off, right? My joke is 2 of my wheels have already fallen off, so I used to be a car, and now I'm a motorcycle. Another wheel falls off, I guess I'll be a unicycle. We were doing an interview, me and Tim, a few years ago, and someone said, you guys are the grandfathers of doom rock. I'm not sure that's true, but we had a very doomy song back on Brian Slagle's Metal Massacre 1, which was Metal Blade Records' first album.
He's part of a band that started way back in 1981 and have had quite a career since. This heavy metal band has graced many stages, even continuing to play live after a 25-year hiatus. After retiring from live shows at the end of 2024, they're back with a live album from the iconic Roxy venue. Robert Garven of Cirith Ungol, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
So, I want to get into like I mentioned there, this band has such a storied history. I was reading all about it, like trying to study up, and so that we could talk about some of it. And like hearing that you're like winding down live shows or soon I think retired from live shows, soon to be retired, something like that. What was it like coming up with those like final couple set lists for live shows?
Well, you know what? I have a couple of things to start off with. First, you said we started in 1981. We actually started in 1971. Our first
71. All
album,
right.
Frost
Sorry.
and
That's
Fire.
probably a problem with my notes.
Yeah, that's okay. Our first album, Frost and Fire, came out in 1981. And the second thing is
Got it.
before this show happened, we lost a member of the group, and we thought that there's no way forward. And so we thought the band was going to break up, and that's what kind of started the whole final tour thing. But then uh, we got a new guitarist. Things were working out really good, and I'm trying to convince the band to keep carrying on. We're actually working on a new album right now, and I hope that we can still do some one-off shows around the world like we were doing uh, since
Awesome.
2015. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I just want to,
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. I was reading that like show is it safer to say so I mean I guess we can just get right into it with like one-off shows. Was it just like the physical toll of these longer like headline tours going like spanning months or whatever that was hard, or is it like what aspect of the live shows were tough enough to like make you consider retiring from live shows?
well, so here's the thing. The band, we always had regular jobs, because we live in
Hmm.
California. It's really expensive. We were never financially successful like bands like Rush or Scorpions or Judas Priest. They can live off all their money, right?
Yeah.
So everyone, or at least most of the members of the band, have full-time jobs. And so we never ever traditionally toured like a band, let's say Judas Priest, that would go on like 90-day shows every other day or every night, move on to another city. Now, this last year, we did something similar to that because it was kind of like supposedly our final tour.
Last hurrah. Yeah.
Yeah. But halfway through there, I think we're in Austria. The shows were every show was getting better and better. And probably because we never played on a tour where you do like 30 days in a row, every
Yeah.
practice makes perfect, right? So every night we're playing, and every night the show's getting tighter and we're playing better, and everyone's enjoying it. And I'm just like, hey, you guys, I'm not ready to quit yet. And everyone in the band said, well, look, we told everyone we're going to quit. We can't be like all these other big bands in the past who said they're going to retire, then they come back later. I think a lot of those bands, they retired when they ran out of money. They came back, you know. But
Yeah.
this whole thing was, we thought there was no path forward. We found a path. So
So
anyway,
why
so
not take it?
yeah, my wife said I was writing a manifesto because I set up a couple of nights in a row because we were going to be on the cover of Decibel magazine, and their
Nice.
story is called The Long Goodbye. And I told him, I go, can you put a question mark on that or something? Because I think the band still has some more energy in us, and I think we have some more music that needs to come out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always like there is a big separation between like recorded music and releasing new music versus like live shows. Even if a band quote unquote retires from live shows, they'll still put out, hopefully still put out singles, albums, things like that, new like recorded music just 'cause that's not as financially and physically tolling, or burdensome to get out.
Well, I'm going to answer your question also too. You said about set list, and that's the band. We always argue over a set list because we have so much good material. When you take, we take 6 albums worth of material over the
Yeah.
years. Most of it's pretty heavy, and we try to fit that into a 30-minute or 45-minute or an hour set list, and we always have to leave something out. And we're fans too. I always go to bands that I like. And they're not playing the song I want to hear. I'm always yelling it up
Yeah.
the top of my voice, and I think that's how people feel with us. But on every show we try to put together like a little bit off each album, the best of. Uh,
Yeah.
but you mentioned that. Okay, so the last big show that we played in Denver at the Decibel Magazine Beer and Metal Fest, right? And one of the guys that saw us, he wrote a article online. I recently did an interview with him, like I'm doing with you, and he said, I knew I was going to hate this band. I tried to get into them before, and they pretty much, they sucked, and he goes, but I was just blown away how fantastic it was, how great their performance was, and how good they sounded. And I think a lot of people that have never heard of our band, uh, we're kind of an acquired taste, and I think that's why we are kind of popular, and we have like a giant underground following around the world because we're offering something different than the regular heavy metal band. We have like a unique vision. We understand our own style of heavy metal, and it's stayed pretty much the same going back through our entire catalog.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, it definitely seems special. I mean, with the latest like live album, like live from the Roxy, it's like I like almost 2 hours, like super energetic, all the on the live recordings. What does it mean to not only perform at such an iconic venue, but to record a live album and at such an iconic venue?
Yeah, and you know what? That night I was pretty sick with the flu.
Hmm.
This is all kind of like at the tail end of the COVID pandemic thing, and no one wants to stand next to you, and everyone's kind of scared, and uh, so I don't think I looked my best that night. But I think I played good, and I think the whole video was pretty awesome. If you listen to it, I got to listen to it for the first time the other night. And I've heard it 100 times because we were listening to the
Yeah.
mix and watching videos, trying to give ideas to the videographers what to do and stuff. But I finally got to sit down on my couch and blast it, and I was pretty much blown away. Not so much by how handsome a bunch of older rocker guys are, but how powerful the sound was, like the bass guitar and the drums and the guitar and our singer and everything just sounded like really loud and powerful.
Yeah.
And what, when you're doing a live album, sometimes it's harder to get that studio album sound, but I think it came out really, really powerful. And that was the actual release party for our album, A Dark Parade, which is right
Yeah.
here, which I think is our best album that we ever did. Uh, and that's why I want to do another album. I think that uh, every album should be better than the one that came before it. I'll let our
Hmm.
reviewers decide if we've succeeded at that, but I think continuous improvement is always important for anything you do in life. And uh, I love
Definitely,
heavy
yeah.
metal, and I want to keep creating the heaviest metal known to man.
And even regardless of what like the listeners, critics, whoever says, just going in with that mindset of trying to make something better than the last is always a big help and super important to have to try to like push and get that result that you're going for and get that quality that can bring it to a whole another level. So I
Yeah,
guess.
I'm sure every band wants to do that. So we're
Yeah.
not the only band or person that tries to, improve on what they did before. But I think we take it really seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned I usually ask my guests this later on in the show, but it's since you brought up having a favorite album, I'm curious, do you have a favorite song from Cirith Ungol, whether that's just like to listen to, what went into making it, anything like that. Well, and it can be like multiple favorites as well. It doesn't literally just have to be the one.
Yeah. Well, I've been telling everyone when I was a kid, there was a movie Ben-Hur with Charlton
Hmm.
Heston, and there's a scene where, they're all on a Roman slave ship and they're rowing, right? And there's a guy in front, like a Roman guy, and he has big hammers, he's pounding them. And as he pounds the hammers, the guys are rowing, right? And he starts pounding faster. And then, the head guy, on the boat, not sure what he is, a legionnaire or whatever. Keeps yelling out, he goes like attack speed, boom, 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 and then he goes ramming speed and he starts speeding up. So I told the guys in the band, I want to come up with a song that has kind of like a similar feel to the music of this scene on one of my favorite movies. And all the guys in the band, liked the scene and they thought that was cool. And so that's kind of how the backbeat is on that song Sailors on a Sea of Fate. uh I do love, there was like one of the videos that Metal Blade Records released, Down Below. It's the last song on the album, super heavy. Another one I like on there is Looking Glass, because it has this really kind of cool drum beat that I've never really done before in a song. Has a traditional kind of slower solo in the middle, and it kind of pops back to like kind of an upbeat part of the song. So that's just one of my favorite songs. But like I said, I think the album's the best thing we ever did. So about every song on the album to me is a real banger.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. And I mean, even just like looking back through the discography and listening as I was doing before this to prep and everything, like seeing the uh I guess it's interesting to me for any band really, or any but especially one with a longer history and career like you guys, like seeing which songs specifically like gain traction or pop off here and there. And it was like interesting to me. I think it's maybe your most popular, one of the most popular, Join the Legion, that song. Like, was there something special about it to you that like you had a good feeling about, or was it more of a surprise that it like kind of caught fire and got so popular?
Well, that I think that's our number one song that's downloaded or streamed off the internet,
Yeah.
and which is, it's kind of like an anthem for the band, like Join the Legion. We're trying to get, we're a heavy metal band, and we have a sense of irony, about heavy metal. A lot
Yeah.
of our music's kind of doomy and stuff. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to assemble the masses of the people, that like our music. I guess it'd be kind of like a Kiss army or something, but
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, no, I like that song, and a lot of times we close the show out with it. We do at the Roxy, because it's kind of, it's kind of like the band's anthem. Come join the Legion, be a member of, follow the band. And when we did this song, this album up here, Forever Black, the first song on that album was Legions Arise. And after the band had broken up for a while, and we got back together, that was our song, trying to get, the guys that joined the Legion before to get up off the couch or wake up from their ancient slumber, and come back
Yeah.
to revisit the band. And I have my little buddy here, Cthulhu. He's always hanging. He's kind of like my mentor. He helps me
Yeah.
out a little bit.
That's awesome. It's interesting that you bring it up because I wanted to get into like you mentioned like getting fans to come back and revisit the band, but I was curious even just like after such a long hiatus with the band and taking that break, what was the decision making process to return to Cirith Ungol versus like starting a new project or coming up with a new band or anything like that?
Well, there's a long story on how the band broke up. It's kind of during the 1990s, and the hair metal thing was happening, the thrash metal thing was happening, and we'd always stuck to our guns on the type of music we wanted to play, the heavy metal that we grew up with. To us, we called it true heavy metal, and it stemmed from
Yeah.
all the early bands that came before us, whether it was Mountain or Budgie, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Blue Cheer, Jimi Hendrix, Cream, all the bands that kind of were the original, and some of psychedelic stuff, the Iron Butterflies, stuff like that. Uh, the Doors, all the things that came before us, you know, we saw ourselves as an extension of that music, and when the hair metal stuff came in and the thrash metal came in, we didn't see us as a part of that. So the band, we lost a few members and we decided, hey, look, that was after this album, I think right here, Paradise Lost came out. We decided to hang it up. But then our bass player and manager, Jarvis Leatherby, in around 2015, I met with him and he said, hey, the band, the band I'm in, Night Demon, we travel all over the world and everyone's wearing like Cirith Ungol shirts. And people say, you're from the same hometown. Why don't you tell those guys to get back together or get back together? And so he said, why don't you guys reunite? And I said, well, probably never going to happen. And he said, well, I'm going to put on a festival here in our hometown, Ventura, California, and name it Frost and Fire after your first album. And I want you to come check it out. And so he had bands come from all over the world and, was sold out and everyone had a good time. And we did a signing session and a lot of people had all our albums and said, hey, you guys should get back together. So, we talked about it and we said, hey, you know what? Let's get back together. And the thought was we'd play one or two shows, just, kind of for the fans, just to show them, what it was
Yeah.
like. They never got to see us. But I always try to explain it was like a giant snowball rolling downhill. We played one show and we played another big festival in Germany, the Keep It True Festival. Oliver was there at that show in Ventura. And he said, if you guys get back together, you guys can headline my show next year. Then we played a really big one in Greece, Up the Hammers. Manolis, a promoter there, said you can come headline my big show in Athens. And then we started playing other shows, and you know but I want you to know from the first moment we got back together, we started working on riffs, and I was pushing the band. I'm always pushing the band. Hey, come on, let's come up with a new song.
Yeah.
Let's write some more music. And everyone's all, well, let's not today. We'll do that next week or whatever. But I'm constantly pushing people, and I don't know. One of my heroes is Enzo Ferrari, and he was like, he wanted to either be a race driver, an opera singer, or an auto journalist, and he never became any of those. But what he was an organizer of men. He would get people together that were talented to create things. And that's what I see my role in the band is. I'm surrounded by all these amazing musicians, and I'm just a drummer, I'm a caveman drummer, right? So, but I can convince them and get them together to create this amazing music, which is Cirith Ungol.
Yeah. Yeah. So, because I mean, I've gotten that sense from you from the start, even with like reading that the live shows might slow down, but you're like, no, I want to keep going and like wanting to release new music. Like, how far do you see this band going? Are you trying to just keep it going for as long as possible, or what's kind of your vision for Cirith Ungol?
Well, Tim and I, were some of the last original members of the band, and
Hmm.
we're not getting any younger. We consider ourselves the elder statesmen of heavy metal. So, for bands our age, every day you wake up and someone just passed away, someone who was in a major band, or, maybe one of your heroes or whatever,
Hmm.
we all start dying the day that we're born, and we don't know how much time we have left. We could leave this interview and both of us could get hit by a hurricane or a tornado or lightning or something, right?
Yeah.
So my goal is, as long as we're producing and playing the true heavy metal that I love, I would like to keep going. And my joke has been, I think we should keep going till the wheels fall off, right? Uh, And my joke is two of my wheels have already fallen off. So I used to be a car, and now I'm a motorcycle. That's my new
I
that's
like that. Yeah. Yeah, and
but
just
when
gotta adapt, you know. You don't gotta freak out about losing two wheels. You just adapt, and now you're a sick motorcycle.
yeah, and if another wheel falls off, I guess I'll be a unicycle or something,
Unicycle, yeah.
which I've never been able to ride.
Yeah, I've never even tried, but it looks hard. You gotta balance, you know. The other thing that you mentioned there too was just like with some of these lineup changes, members coming into the band, leaving the band, like how did you keep kind of like you said this cohesive so like sound for the band together and like keep it, you know, the same overall identity.
Well, Tim, our singer, uh, he has a very unique voice, which fits with our very unique
Hmm.
style of heavy metal, right? And my drumming is very unorthodox. I taught myself to play drums, and even though I had major influence by a lot of drummers over the years, Corky Lang from Mountain, Ian Page from Deep Purple, Bill Ward from Black Sabbath, a lot of the drummers that I grew up listening to. I created my own style, which is kind of like I alluded to earlier. It's more like a caveman style. I'm not I'm not trying to be the best drummer in the world. That's actually a girl on YouTube, the best drummer in the world. you know, but what I do have is I have this really powerful, thick style. Uh, and we played in Mexico, and a lady came up to me, and I don't get a lot of people, a lot of guys in the band, people come up, oh, you're the greatest singer, the greatest guitarist, greatest
Yeah.
bass player, whatever. Only a handful of people have ever said anything nice about my drumming. But this lady came up and she goes, I teach drumming at a college. And she says, I love your drumming because you cut out all the unnecessary drum beats and leave the only thing that's necessary to create the song. And it was kind of a really nice compliment to me because that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make it really thick and really heavy, you know, and
Yeah.
even though I knew Neil Peart, I was never trying to be like a drummer, like a technical drummer of that skill. I wanted it to be kind of like from like one of those caveman movies, where the guy's like beating a stick on another log and
Yeah.
it breaks in half or something.
Yeah, exactly. And well, I mean like because a lot of I'm sure also a lot of the more technical stuff is probably just like harder to keep up with or play as you get older. Not to call you old, but like just for anybody, like you know, there's only I feel like a lot of what you're describing and trying to do is are things that can be played until the wheels fall off.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't my intention to make it easy. I just wanted to make it really heavy.
Yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah,
think my
exactly.
style of drumming also doesn't lend itself to good video stuff. There's a lot of shots of me from the side, and like I said, wasn't feeling that well that night. Uh, but my joke is we played a lot of big shows like Wacken where we opened up like for Judas Priest. There's giant, diamond vision screens, and I always tell some of my fans, I said, I go, the farther you sit away from the stage, the better we are because you don't get to look at us up close. And I was
Yeah.
I was joking because I think on this video, I think it comes off pretty amazing. It's kind of exciting, and You
Yeah.
hear all the good parts of the songs, and I was kind of blown away because a lot of live videos fall short of what the band's performance is. And I think what this video is, it's like a perfect snapshot of the band at that one moment. And since we were playing the release party for Dark Parade, I think we nailed that album, the feeling that I wanted in my mind for us to do. So I'm proud of it. I urge anyone who hasn't heard it. I was
Go take
curious.
a listen.
Yeah, did you see the video? Did you get to
I
watch it?
haven't watched through the video. No, I'll have to check it out. I was just listening to some of the audio and some of the songs that the band has put out. I haven't
Yeah, well,
gotten to look.
yeah, it's the same. It's the same. I'm sure it's the same music.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you watch the
But
video,
it
crank it up. Because like I said, I sat on my couch. I have like a giant sound system. A lot of times back in the olden days, a lot of the studios had these major speakers, and you could turn it up till your brain would fry. But nowadays, everyone's into kind of like these smaller studio speakers.
yeah.
And I mean, that's no matter what studio you go to around the world, they're gonna have these like $1 million little small speakers, right? But I'm still like old school, so I have these giant.
Nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like a 12-inch woofer, which nowadays is kind of like a rarity. But anyway, I turned it up full blast. I have a giant subwoofer. I just sitting there going, "Wow, this is really powerful." And that was my goal. My goal is to be in a band that's like extremely heavy and powerful. And we have these two personalities. Some of our music kind of fantasy based, but over the last couple of albums, we've kind of morphed into like a very doomy uh, sound. And we're doing an interview, me and Tim, a few years ago, and someone said, "You guys are the grandfathers of doom rock." I'm not sure that's true, but I mean, we had a very doomy song back on Brian Slagle's Metal Massacre 1, which was Metal Blade Records' first album, Death of the Sun. And it kind of talked about the end of the world when the sun burns up. And our sun, I think it's 3 billion, 2 billion years old. In a couple of more billion years, it's going to turn into like a giant
Yeah.
big thing. And then it's going to explode down into some red dwarf, and then it'll turn into a black hole eventually. Anyway, so that was what that song was about. And I think a lot of the lyrics and a lot of the music on our last couple of albums is kind of it's a reflection on the very doomy world that we live that's around us at all times.
Yeah.
Pain, suffering.
And I guess I didn't really realize it until you mentioned it there, but like with the amount of time that this band has been around, you mentioned the first album on Metal Blade Records, and now like you as a band are on Metal Blade Records and everything. Just tell me about like being so close to such an iconic label and like growing alongside it.
Well, Brian was our good friend, uh, and he worked at a record store back in the day in the Valley, which was kind of like San Fernando Valley,
Yeah.
Oz Records, and he was like the manager there, and we had our first album out of Frost and Fire once again right here, and what we did is we created that album because we were trying to get a record company interested in us, and everyone would send out cassettes back then to record companies. And the
Yeah.
joke was, the secretary would take all the cassettes and dump them on the table, and the record company executive would look at them. Then he'd pop them in his thing and erase them and put his favorite mix on there for what he wanted to hear, right? And so we thought, maybe if we make an album that is so close to what a record company would release for, like, let's say, a new album, a new heavy metal album, we thought, let's make our very own best thing that we can with an amazing cover. Michael Whalen painted all our album covers behind me here. And we did that, and we actually took it to Brian's store and we said, hey, we put out this album, and we're trying to get record company interest in the band,
Yeah.
but could you sell some of these at your stores? So I think that's how we met him eventually, originally, is we were taking our albums around trying to sell them, right? And he hooked us up with a company that was in Los Angeles, Green World, that's what they were called, and they were a big import export company. So they actually took a bunch of the records and export them overseas. And that's how we kind of got our following in Europe. But while we're
That's
talking to
yeah.
Brian, we're going, hey, we want to be like rock stars. And he's all like, I want my own record label. I want to start my own record label. And so, right about at that same time, he goes, I'm going to put out an album, a compilation album with a bunch of bands on there. Would you like to be on there? And we were very lucky enough to be on Brian's very first album. And we're still on Metal Blade today. And they're the most amazing record company in the world. And they're very supportive of the band. Um, and they've actually changed the face of heavy metal music over the years. So many big
Yeah,
metal
absolutely.
bands have been on there, and you know, we're we're there to stay.
Yeah, which is amazing and so great that you have such a close relationship on and with the label and like I was talking to the band Byzantine. I don't know if you know OJ from there, but like such a like we were talking about it. It seems like kind of the ideal record label. Like they're so supportive, give so much like support and just like space to the bands and artists to let them do what they need to do to make music.
Yeah, and it's a match made in heaven or in hell, depending on where you're coming from. I'm just thinking, I'm talking about, all our songs are filled with doom and gloom about pain and
Yeah.
suffering, and I'm smiling, and I apologize for that. When I'm
You
playing
don't need to
drums in the
apologize for
video,
smiling. It's
people
fine. It's fine.
when
Yeah.
I'm playing drums, people say, "Oh, you look like you're having so much fun." And like while I'm playing drums, I'm actually trying to frown and growl at the crowd. So I apologize for like giving out the impression that I'm having a good time when I'm trying to show that I'm suffering on stage.
Yeah, it's all right. There's always that separation, like I've had this a couple of times where I'll like watch a movie, for example, and get so invested in like a character or an actor, and then watch like an interview with them after the fact, and they're completely different from the character. Like it completely breaks in me, and I'm like, no, you're supposed to be this super like serious, dramatic person, and then now you're all bubbly and have a completely different accent.
Well, unfortunately, I'm probably the same guy on and off stage. Hey,
Hey,
I wanted to
that's
mention something really cool happened recently.
yeah,
Our our first album up here, Frost and Frost and
yeah.
Fire. The title song of that was used on a mini series on the Peacock channel called Hysteria. And
That's
Bruce
awesome.
Campbell, who's the actor in that, was from The Evil Dead, one of my favorite movies of all time. He's in a
Yeah.
bunch of other movies, Bubba Hotep and stuff. Anyway, they play our title track on there, like in a really great part of the series. It's like a little heavy metal band in a small town, and they're not getting enough interest. So one of the guy decides that, well, we're gonna act like we're a satanic band, and the whole series kind of revolves around a satanic panic in the 1980s where everyone thought
Yeah.
like Satan was taking over the world. Anyway, they weren't really a satanic band; they were just acting like they were, right. Anyway, his mom busted him because she saw a poster with a pentagram on it, and she goes, you got to quit playing in a band. You can't play tonight at this party you're
Yeah.
going to. And he pretty much says, screw it. And and he walks out the door with his guitar and gets on his bike to pedal over to their show where they're going to play. And they start playing our song Frost and Fire. And it was pretty amazing because it's the first time, I'd ever heard one of our songs on kind of like a major,
Yeah. Yeah, no,
iconic.
that's awesome. I've heard of Hysteria. I haven't gotten to watch it yet, but I was meaning to. I've seen ads for it and it seems like a great show. So that's awesome for you guys and I'm happy you got that placement.
Yeah, I kind of grew up on the Evil Dead movies. They were kind of
Hmm.
Sam Raimi, the guy that directed them. He did a bunch
Yeah.
of other movies and stuff. So, like Darkman and movies like that. So I just kind of I was pretty excited about that, and I think I've heard a rumor one of our other songs is going to be coming out on another series. I'm not sure
That's awesome.
what
Yeah, yeah. The
where it is,
details are still unclear as it's
yeah.
being worked out and everything, but
But I mean, that
that hey,
stuff is
that's
kind of
awesome.
exciting. We have a song
Yeah.
Black Machine, and I always thought that, hey, that would be a good song for like a car commercial or something.
Yeah, yeah. So, just like getting into more learning about like you, even like your just like roots as a musician. You mentioned teaching yourself drums and everything like that. At what point did you know you wanted to like try to pursue music, be in a band, things like that? And what were some of maybe the other like dreams or career aspirations you had outside of music?
Well, that's why I like people being exposed to heavy metal because I think it's such a unifying force in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, the joke is, like in my hometown here, we live in California, it's kind of like a surf town, a lot of country western type stuff going on and surf music. I remember the
Yeah.
Beach Boys played here when I was a kid, but uh, in my high school, and this is kind of like a story I tell to everyone, it's kind of true. In our high school, there was probably around 15 or 25 super hardcore heavy metal guys there when we started our band, right? And I'm sure other people were hangers on or listened to the music or what have you. And the punchline of my joke is if you went to that same school, which is like a mile from where I'm sitting right now, there's probably 15 or 25 heavy metal hardcore guys in the school now. So I think heavy metal always has a an audience, and I think the people that like the music are going to stick with it, either their whole lives or for a long period of time. And I think it's a pretty amazing genre of music because it's very powerful. It's not,
Yeah.
there's no weakness to it. I mean, it's got soaring vocals and like slashing guitars and pounding drum beats and pounding bass. And to me, it's like a really exciting style of music. And the first concert, my neighbor, girl that was my neighbor, she took me to go see Mountain playing down in Los Angeles, a place called the Long Beach Arena, where they had all sorts of famous concerts over the years. And it was my first experience at a heavy metal concert. And even though I'd been listening to music for a long period of time, it was a breakout moment for me. And I just like, and I was already, excuse me, I was already in the
No
band. So it
problem.
wasn't like it was my first experience with heavy metal, but going to my first concert, I think solidified in my mind, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, because it's always like I'm someone who's relatively new to metal music or getting into it and everything, but because I always was like, oh, I can't like really understand what they're saying, or it's like just a bunch of noise and loud and stuff. And then now, as I'm learning more about music, getting more into music, I was like, wow, I actually have like a really deep respect for people who can play this stuff because it's usually super hard and super fast and everything, and especially the vocals, like learning more about like how much like voice control and like upkeep you have to do to not shred your vocal cords is crazy. And and so yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a lyric sheet in all the albums. You said it's hard to understand the lyrics. So,
Yeah. And but I'm at school for music, and one of my professors is like a huge metalhead and everything, and showed us in class what song was it? We were talking about exactly this, like lyrics and vocals in metal music, and I think it was the band Ginger and their vocalist, but I think the song it might be Pisces that it was like sound like it's really like beautiful like operatic singing and then also like really distorted like guttural vocals, and then you realize that it's all one vocalist and like the same person. I was like, I like it blew my mind. I couldn't comprehend that those sounds were coming from the same voice.
Today I'll be a friend of mine.
what I want you to do next time you go to class, you need to take show and tell.
Yeah, yeah. I need to get a Cirith Ungol record for my collection over here, and I'll bring in and I'll ask him about it. Be like, you got to listen to these guys.
That's amazing. Amazing story.
Yeah. So, I mean, with all the experience you've gotten, I'm sure you've learned a bunch from being in a band, being signed to a label and pursuing music this long. If there are other drummers, bands just starting out, and what tips or advice would you give to them to like kickstart their career?
Yeah, that's another funny story. Tim and I were doing an interview, I don't know, I think for a radio station in Houston, Texas.
Hmm.
And someone asked us, what advice would you give to other bands? and he said, you should break up for 15 years and then get back together, because even though we put out amazing music and people all over the world loved our band before the band kind of took our big break in the middle, it wasn't until after we came back that people actually, I think, appreciated what we were doing before. And
Yeah.
that goes back to that there's a whole crowd out there that listens to this type of music, and not only are they loyal to the music, but they're actually loyal to certain bands and they actually appreciate what bands do. And it's not just one band. I think the fans of our band love a lot of other bands, but I think they realize that what we're doing is so specifically focused, that they appreciate our efforts. And that's why we're pretty happy. Every time we play, a lot of people come out to the show. uh, we've done some pretty big shows around the world, and yet we'll do some really small shows. I mentioned we recently played in Boston and New York City and Brooklyn, and they were just packed. And it's not
Yeah.
unusual for someone to come up to me. We were in South America, and a gentleman came up. He said, "I waited my entire life to see you," and I go, "Well, I've waited my entire life to see you." So
Yeah, exactly. I love that like band and fan interaction or that back and forth and everything. I mean, my favorite band is 21 Pilots. Still rock and that kind of vibe, but definitely not metal. But at the end of all their shows, they like take a bow to the crowd and they're like, just did their big finale song and they're like kind of I guess it's like a slogan or their like catchphrase to end the show is we're 21 Pilots and so are you, because their whole thing is like we wouldn't be on these stages, we wouldn't be able to have this blessed career if the fans weren't there for it. And so it's always great to see just like bands really getting to interact and show love with their fans. So I'm glad you got that moment.
we're a band of the people. A lot of the bands we played with, some of the bands that are my heroes. I don't want to mention any names, but I thought we'd go backstage. We're backstage with them. I thought that we could say hello to them. Like
Yeah.
famous person here or there, right? And usually they're locked away and you can't see them. But almost at every show, whether it's a small one where we're playing a small club or like a big festival where there's tens of thousands of people, uh, we move through the crowd. We talk to people that are there. Sometimes if it's a lot of people, sometimes it's kind of hectic. But uh, like I said, we're not rock stars. We're like musicians that love heavy metal, and so it's not uncommon before or after show to see uh, the band kind of cruising, not backstage, but out in the audience. I remember we were playing in Mexico, and I think they're worried, for our security, and so me and Tim were walking around, and there was two security guards with us, like being all protective, like the Secret
Yeah.
Service or something, and it was kind of humorous to us because we're thinking, well, what, someone's going to kidnap us or who knows what, right? So it was kind of funny. Uh, but nothing like that's ever happened. People want autographs and people want to shake your hand, and
Yeah.
people want to talk about your music. And I think that's, if you're a musician and you've gotten to the level where people actually like your music, that's the obligation, is to talk to the people. Now, you said fans, and I use the word fans too, but I consider like the people that listen to our band our friends, because, and even though I'm a
Yeah.
fan of other bands, it's like these guys aren't just fans of our band, they're our friends because they've supported us over the years. They go buy our albums, they
They've
come
seen you
out to the
grow.
show. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and like you too, Heroic, you're a friend. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. This feels honestly just like conversations with friends. Like it doesn't feel like such an official like interview that I'm asking you questions or anything. Um, but
I'm
like
not
just
answering them very well either, right?
it's fine. You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Are you a music artist looking to get your songs on Spotify, Apple Music, and basically every other streaming platform? Then you should check out DistroKid. DistroKid is a music distribution service. It's what I use to get all my music out across platforms, and I find it really helpful. You can manage your songs, lyrics, credits, and even manage releases across artists, under one account. I don't think I would have gotten started as early as I did with music if it weren't for DistroKid. So if you want to get started, I'll put their pricing on the screen here. And yes, that does say the cheapest plan is at $2 a month. I know some of you spend more than that every day on your coffees. Like this is to get your music heard by the world. But we're getting off track. DistroKid has so many additional features like pre-save pages, getting your music onto platforms like Instagram and TikTok, where people can put your music on their posts. If you use my link in the description, you will get 7% off any of these plans, making it even cheaper to get your career started. So again, check out my link in the description for 7% off any plan. And now let's get back to the episode. With the band, again, because you're such seem to be like such a driving force nowadays in like let's make more music. Let's keep doing shows, things like that. What is now the creative process for the band? Like is it a bit of work to like get things moving and be like we should do this, or just like take me into the creative process that you guys have now?
Yeah, well, it's no secret, two of our members, Armand, our guitarist, and Jarvis, our bass player, they're in another amazing, powerful band, Night Demon. And, they spend quite a bit of the time on the road with their band. And when they're not, we're working together, working on new material. Um, and it's not unusual, a lot of guys in bands now, I've met people that are in five bands, I have friends that are in five
Yeah.
bands. And, the music industry is kind of a struggle if you're kind of trying to live off the music, you can't pay the bills sometimes with just one band. And also too, sometimes people they have a little bit of different creativity in them. uh Beyonce, she's playing country western music now, I mean, what can I say? So I think when the guys in Night Demon are doing their thing, which is like a lot more powerful new wave of British heavy metal, then they're working with us and we're kind of creating this traditional old style heavy metal, and it kind of gives them an outlet to do two different things, and
Hmm.
I'll be announcing my jazz group at the end of this interview. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yeah, yeah. But
So
but
anyway,
but I get it. The variety of genres that you do or
yeah.
sounds and everything. Yeah.
So anyway, that's what when they're not busy with their other band kicking ass on stage, we're together writing music and trying to figure out what to do next. We're actually playing. Uh, there's a kind of like a big kind of a cool event coming on in San Diego coming up later this year in October. It's kind of like a heavy metal swap meet, and people come from all over the world and the country to, sell heavy metal records or trade, Kiss
Yeah.
action figures or whatever they're going to do, right? And so they have a bunch of bands play there, and so we're going to play down there. And we hear it's kind of a really cool scene, so we're going to go down there and check that out.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And so I mean, because it with all these different sounds that you play, and especially with like you said, your unique style of drumming, are you finding inspiration from other sounds and bands when you're trying to make music, or is it very like original, just from the guys in the band?
Well, yeah, no, that's true. And we play with so many bands. People ask me, what's your favorite upcoming band? Every once in a while I'll mention someone and I regret it instantly because I have like 50 friends
There are
in
so
band.
many answers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if you leave someone out, that's a joke, when we're writing on the album, your special thanks list, uh people have told me, they said, look, just don't write anything, because if you leave someone out, then you're going to hurt their feelings, so
Yeah.
turns out some of us on there, we have like this giant paragraph of and people, and ironically you probably still leave people out, but you want to try to thank everyone uh that has been supportive or helpful for your
Yeah.
career. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and well, and a lot of times you just like you don't even know who might have been like supportive or one, like there's so much like indirect support that could happen. Then it's like I like I didn't even think to mention it, but now that you bring it up, like yeah, that like this happened. I was listening to a podcast talking about like how picky some people are with like like song credits and everything, and like who to credit as writers and whatnot, and like some people like if they hear a song, if they do anything to like change it all, they want their name on it and they want the credit versus like people who will like go in, give advice, even like come up with ideas and leave and are like, yeah, you don't have to give me anything on the song. And they were like, you just like is a question of where to draw the line and the like extreme they brought it to was like, okay, but we can't give everyone writing credit because then how do you give credit to like the Uber driver who brought the coffee, who gave it to the assistant at that moment as you were coming up with that idea? And it's like you like it, you can just take it way too far, and there's always someone to thank, but at the end of the day, you do the best you can.
Yeah, our band, we've always kind of split everything equally among all the members, even if one person wrote the song. Because there's like stories of, like some bigger bands, one guy that wrote the music, he's living up on the hill in a fancy house while the other guys are basically homeless.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's not fair. But you also ask about musical influence of other bands. Yeah, no, we've all the bands that we played with, you get all sorts of influence from them. And that's another joke. I remember someone telling me once ago, there's no such thing as a new riff, or a new,
Yeah. Yeah.
every riff has already been done before. And that's
Nothing's
another funny
original.
story. Tim sent me something off YouTube recently of some big famous band, which I won't mention their name, but it had 5 or 6 of their biggest songs, and then it also showed like, where like kind of where the idea came from, and one of them was like one of the biggest songs that was ever here in rock music, and then it was like a mariachi song, like the riff originally was a
Yeah.
mariachi riff that turned into this big heavy metal riff. So, I guess what we all do is we take our inspiration from around us, and kind of absorb it, and then you kind of create your own version of it,
Yeah, there's something inherently original with whether it's the music you're a fan of, even like just something inherently within you, like your drumming, as much inspiration as you can take, is always going to be somewhat original because of your own style and like teaching yourself how to play. Like there, like it's always going to be slightly different. No, it's never going to be like the exact same unless you're doing like trying to do a cover song that's like note for note perfect. But I don't know many people who do that. So
yeah. And I think that that example I gave you, I think some of that stuff was close to plagiarism. Excuse
yeah,
me. But I think we've totally tried to stay out of that. Matter of fact, we're working on songs right now, and one of the guys in the band said, "Isn't this similar?" Excuse me. Isn't
no
this similar to
problem.
someone else's band, right? And or some other song? And then we'd say, "Well, we can't use that," you know. And then every once in a while, we'll be writing a song, and a member of the band says, "Wow, that's similar to one of our other songs," and our joke is we can steal ideas from our own band, but you can't
Yeah,
steal from other bands. So, and I
yeah,
think we've done that on actually some of the songs on our last couple albums, Forever Black and Dark Parade. We've taken some ideas from our earlier music, and we weren't doing it because we were lazy or we didn't have other ideas. We kind of did it to kind of reinforce, something that was kind of like a style of the band already. So, here's something we did that people liked and we thought that was really good. Let's kind of, like
yeah.
showcase it again in another little piece of our song, kind of like you'd hide something, you'd hide like,
A little Easter egg, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and
And
it's
it brings
fun.
it full circle to what we were talking about of like trying to be better than your past work and build from there and everything. And even with the whole like copyright or plagiarism discussion, so much of it depends. I'm trying to think of a way to phrase it, but I think to put it bluntly, just how much the other artist cares. Like I've heard stories. I just recently heard a story. These are going to be two very non-metal examples, but they're just the two that come to mind. Um, in a country sense, the singer Maren Morris had a song and was like getting ready to put out an album and like showing people and was so proud of it. And then like a week before it came out, showed her mom, and her mom was like, "Oh, this sounds like a uh I think it was maybe Dolly Parton song that I like." And she was like, "Well, is it?" And like went back to listen, and it was like super similar without like unintentionally, and she was like, oh no, like we have a week to figure this out. Tried to like reach out to Dolly Parton's people, and she was like, listen, I mean, like obviously she's Dolly Parton. She was like, I'm fine with like royalties and music money. Like you're okay. It was unintentional. Like keep it. You don't have to like give me any money, put my name on it, anything like that. Versus then the whole like on the opposite end of the spectrum, the lawsuit between the I think Marvin Gaye estate and Ed Sheeran, where it was like a similar chord structure, like guitar pattern or whatnot, and um and it was like super similar. And when I was learning about this, the person I was talking about it with was like, did so the story is there was some like guitar pattern that was super similar between two of their songs, and the Marvin Gaye estate was trying to say that Ed Sheeran had stolen it, or like, they should get some money from it for a copyright infringement. And he was like, you can't steal a chord progression or a guitar pattern. And in court, picked up a guitar and just like was looping that progression and vocally sang, I think it was something crazy like 50 songs that all fit over that exact one. And his point was being like, so many songs have used this, so like from decades before to like yesterday, like who knows who did it first from where, like it'd be impossible to track. And then the person I was learning about this with was like, did he just prove that he's unoriginal and whatnot? And like, and that it's such a simple chord progression, which is funny to think about. But like, ultimately, the end point is like, there's gonna be something that's done before or super similar to something else out there, and like ultimately, you just have to like get over that hump or try to put your own style and spin on it to make it original.
Yeah, and like I said, we're doing our very best to write the most original heavy metal known to man.
Yeah. And I think you're doing a great job of it. And so if there's someone who hasn't heard the most original metal music known to man, what and like wants to get into Cirith Ungol, what song would you recommend as like a good introduction to the band?
I don't know, there's so much heavy stuff on our albums. I have quite a few songs that I love.
Hmm.
On King of the Dead, album right up here, King of the Dead, the song King of the Dead on our first album, I'm Alive. That's kind of a lot of times we'll play that at the beginning of our set. It's kind of like another anthem of the band. Um, on the album right behind me, if I can point up to it right up here behind my head, One Foot in Hell. There's a song on there, Chaos Descends, which is pretty cool. The Join Allegiance on Paradise Lost. There's there's some really good stuff out there, and I think each song might appeal to a different person. Each one has a different kind of feeling to it. So I mean, but those are some I would point out to, and on the newest album and on the live album, Looking Glass, Sailor on the Seas of Fate, Down Below. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of I think some of our heaviest songs. We play those all in our set from time to time. I'm a drummer, so I have a cowbell, and the guys in the band really don't like a cowbell. But I still a lot of
We need more cowbell.
yeah, more cowbell, right? So the joke is now on every album I get one part of a song where I get to use the cowbell on or something. I guess I'm fine with that. But there's some good cowbell on Dark Parade, and it's kind
Yeah.
of I know we're mixing down the album, we're in the studio, and I'm like, can you turn the cowbell up? And all the other guys in the band are, can you turn the cowbell down? And so we kind of got it to the point where it's not like extremely noticeable, but I think it provides kind of like a cool Latin type, you know, or primitive, even before that,
Yeah.
or primitive. Once again, getting back to the caveman, he has a stick and he's beating on of,
Yeah,
yeah,
and it all adds to the sound, the aesthetic and everything.
in the
Um,
Bronze Age or something. Maybe he was beating on a piece of bronze or something.
yeah. So I want to like start slowly wrapping things up here with just like a couple, I guess it'd be more hypothetical questions that I like to ask the guests I have on. And the first one is just if Cirith Ungol could make a song with any band, any artist in the world, who would you want them to collaborate with?
Wow. That's hard to say. There's so
Yeah.
many good bands out there,
Yeah. Again, back to the conversation that you don't want to leave anybody out.
Well,
Like feel free to name a bunch.
we played with Judas Priest several times, because
Hmm.
we're elder statesmen of heavy metal, and a
Yeah.
lot of the big festivals we played at, I'd kind of like to do something, I think, with them. Maybe I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
uh, so I mean, I guess that would be one of my answers. I mean, there's so many people. Matter of fact, we've never done that many even covers in our band's career. We did a cover of Arthur Brown's Fire, and it's funny, we have a bunch of other songs. We have The Fire and A Little Fire. We have a bunch of songs with the word frost and fire in it right there. So, but we also did Fire on Paradise Lost. And what's funny, we played a bunch of festivals over the years where Arthur Brown played the year before, the year after, but we kept hoping that we'd like end up at the same festival, as the
Yeah.
gentleman that we did one of their songs, right? And it's never happened, but that would be an amazing thing too. I could see
Yeah.
Arthur Brown and Tim Singer on stage doing Fire together, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And then do you, well, actually, I asked earlier about like if you had any favorite songs, but I guess for live shows, do you have any live show you've played that's your favorite or that really sticks in your mind? Maybe one of these Judas Priest shows or anything like that.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of those. We played a festival, Chaos Descends, which I think is kind of named after one of our songs. It was out in the forest in Germany, and there's mountains and there were stars and trees. And I remember we're playing that song, and the crowd was chanting the chorus, Chaos Descends, behind there. And I looked around, and I could see the stars and the mountains, and
Yeah.
outside the sound just bouncing off everything. There was a river running around it. That was pretty cool. We played in South America, and I think we were in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I and it could have been in Bogota, Colombia, but we were playing one of the clubs down there, and afterwards the crowd started chanting our name, and it was kind of like at a soccer game or something. They're
Yeah.
chanting, and it was so surreal, because we get up on stage, we play, people clap, you leave. When you hear stuff
Yeah.
like that, it's amazing. We played
It's
another
yeah.
show, a big magazine in Germany, Deaf Forever. It was their birthday party in Hamburg at this really famous venue called Mark the Halle. And it's just like, famous bands over the years, Scorpions, AC/DC, everyone played there, And so we were playing there, headlining the show for this amazing magazine's birthday party. And afterwards, the guy sent me a picture from out in the audience, the crowd chanting our name, and it's things like that that actually make you feel, that you're doing something right.
And that it's something's happening here or that you have something special. Yeah, that's awesome. And building off of that, is there as amazing as a live career as you guys have had already, is there still any with this push to keep playing shows, do you have any but or festivals that you want to play one day?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places I'd like to play. There's festivals all over the world that we never made it to. Oh, another one, we played a festival in Poland, and it was at this recreation of like a 12th century wooden, kind of like Renaissance fort.
That's
Uh,
cool.
and it was just surreal. I'm up on stage, and I got pictures. You're looking out at this place, and like they had little rooms around the edges, and they had like torture devices like a rack and a real Iron Maiden, not the band, but
Yeah.
an
Yeah,
Iron
yeah.
Maiden, and it was, you kind of felt like you were in some kind of Renaissance, thing. So, I just, any place we have never played before, I'd like to go. We've never been to Japan.
Play wherever you can. Yeah.
Yeah, we played recently in Australia and South America, and we played an amazing show in China. And when we were in China, we signed autographs for a long time. And before we went there, I would have thought that no one in China had even heard of our band. And there was, a full packed crowd of people that
Yeah.
had three or four of our albums. And I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. So, and that's the other thing. I think heavy metal, we always talk about world peace, and our songs are about doom and the end of the world, and as we know it. But the music is something that can bring the world together. And heavy metal
Absolutely,
is
yeah.
a great example of that. You go to any country on earth, pretty much, except for Antarctica. The penguins haven't accepted heavy metal yet, but
Yeah.
we're working on them. But anyway, you go to any country on earth, and people that like heavy metal, you know, if you got them together in a room, they'd be friends.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, those are all the questions I had for you today. So thanks so much for coming on, answering them, telling me a bit more about the band and giving me kind of a history of Cirith Ungol. It's been so much fun. I feel like I've learned a lot. I if you're listening to this, go check out the live album from the Roxy with Cirith Ungol and I yep, hold up all the merch, all the vinyl, everything. Go shop, go support the band. And I mean like whether it's upcoming shows if or any new music that the band comes out. I just can't wait to see what's next for the band. So
Well, Heroic, thank you for having me on, and thanks for talking about heavy metal. I know we veered off onto some other topics, but
hey, that's always how it goes. That's great.
well, I hope
Awesome.
that people go out and check out our new album, and I hope that we get a chance to talk again, maybe when the next one comes out.
Absolutely. I'd love to have you back on.